Hello, I'm Tom, an assistant producer in the world of telly, and for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with knowing how TV is made, thanks to shows like Doctor Who Confidential and all the behind-the-scenes features on DVDs. One of my biggest passions is helping to make TV more accessible to those starting out in the industry, as for me, it seemed like a big scary world that was impossible to get into. Getting into TV aims to break down those barriers and deep dive into every single role that we can, from unscripted to scripted. Join me in each episode where I'll talk to a different TV professional about what they do, how they got there, what tips and tricks they can give you, plus some general TV chat. In this episode, I'm joined by Joseph Lidster, a writer of many great bits of children's television, who will be talking to me about writing for TV, advice he can offer to budding writers, and also loads of chat about the shows that we're loving at the moment. This is Getting Into TV. I just want to say thank you for talking to me. Like I've told you countless times before, I have loved The Nightmare Man, which was your Sarah Jane script from series 4. It's the one thing from Doctor Who's absolutely terrifying me. So I'm very happy that you agreed to talk to me today about writing for TV. For those listening, though, that might not know your career and what you've done, do you mind just giving a brief rundown of what you've done as a writer?
Yeah, sure. So I started writing audios for a company called Big Finish, who sort of do Doctor Who. Well, at the time, just did Doctor Who things. I just sent them in an idea, and they liked it, and so that was nice. And then from that, I got work doing spin-off websites for Doctor Who. Sort of, they did an official sort of tie-in website thing, which was quite big in the early 2000s. And then eventually do that, got into telly. So my first telly was an episode of Torchwood, which is the adult spin-off of Doctor Who. Then I did the child spin-off of Doctor Who, which is Sarah Jane Adventures. And from that, I got an agent and ended up doing quite a lot of kids' TV. I've done various shows over the years. So yeah, mostly kids' TV, but then as a sort of side hustle, I've been doing fringe theatre, quite a bit of fringe theatre. And I'm this year writing my first sort of paid full-length play. And I'm writing my first 20,000 word novel. So I'm doing lots of little things this year. But yeah, so I'd like to do a variety of things, but I suppose TV's been my main job for the last few years.
I suppose being a writer, it's very varied. You can go various places with it. Like you say, you've done TV, but you've also done audio, and you've gone on to hopefully do this novel and the theatre. So yeah, congrats with all that.
Oh, cool.
I just want to know, a lot of what I do on this podcast is about how to give advice to those wanting to get into the industry. So I just wanted to know a bit about how you got into telly, and what training opportunities, if there were any, that you undertook, or if there's any opportunities out there that you know of that people should look into.
I got into it through a very odd, specific way. So the way I got into it was by writing for this audio company, and one of the producers at the audio company went to work on Torchwood, the TV series, as I think it was sort of in charge of merchandise and so on, and then as a script editor, I think. And he recommended me to the producer. So that's obviously not a way that most people will have open to them. So, but I think what you have to do is look at meeting people. There's a saying about who you know, not what you know. And while I think that suggests nepotism and so on, there is an element of you are going to be recommended by people to people if you're good, or if you're fun to work with, or if you're on time. Then people will recommend you, and that's is effectively what happened to me. So I think there's really, other than just keep writing, you've got to keep writing, it's looking for chances to meet people. So it's looking for writers groups. It's going to parties, going to the pub. I mean, I got my first website job came about because I was in the pub, and the producer of the website saw me, came over to tell me he'd heard one of my audios and really liked it. And I thanked him, and then he said, he wanted to talk to me about working on the websites. But if I hadn't been in the pub that night, perhaps he'd have seen someone else. Perhaps he had me in mind, but perhaps he'd have seen someone else and gone, actually, they're good as well. I'll speak to them, because it's nice to speak to someone in person.
It's definitely one of them things that you need to always be in the mind of of that person. I mean, I'm currently on a training thing myself for assistant producing, and what the one thing that they said is we have all this training throughout the year, and the one thing that they said to make sure we do is to always email the trainer afterwards and just say
Yeah.
thank you and just build up that relationship. And I suppose that's what TV is about, is building up relationships.
Yeah, and that's a lot of my work. Sometimes you sort of go, why do I give my agent so much money when a lot of my work has been somebody I've worked with on one show has gone on to another show and recommended me that. Agents are worth their weight in gold, absolutely. But there is, there is a lot of my career I can go, well, I got that because I knew that person, or I worked with that person before, and and so on. So I do think that does make a big difference. But to get into that, I think you need to look for writers groups and actors groups and things like that, which is always good to take your work to anyway, because it's always good to have feedback on your work from anybody. I do think that's really important. But also, by doing that, I met, so the writers group I joined about 10 years ago, I met an actor, and that actor then became a theatre producer, and that's part of all of that is tied into why I'm doing this full-length play this year. It all sort of links together. So I think it's looking for that. And just on a basic level, it's signing up to things like the BBC Writers' Room mailing list. There's also one I follow called London Writers Workshop. And actually, they don't just do London, they do all sorts of opportunities. So it's looking out for opportunities. It does mean doing unpaid work a lot of the time, fringe theatre and that. But it's really rewarding seeing work of yours on the stage.
And I suppose so, I think that the fringe gives you that opportunity to play with like what you're doing as well. It gives you that chance to learn.
Yeah, and for me, certainly, like, who's been doing kids TV for the last 10 or whatever it is years. There's something nice about doing fringe theatre that I can swear. I can talk about more adult issues. I can experiment with the format a lot more than you can say when you're working on somebody else's TV show where there's an established format. So yeah, I'd say it's looking out for things like BBC Writers' Room. It's entering every competition you can. I've literally seen someone on Twitter today saying they're looking for short plays to do in, I think, Manchester or Liverpool next year. It's looking out for those opportunities, because it's the opportunity to see your work being done, and it's the opportunity to meet people that aren't just Twitter handles, because I do think that's, it's not just pestering people on Twitter. It's actually meeting people in the flesh and going, all right, yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. I absolutely agree. On the subject of training, I just wanted to touch on a little bit about like training grounds. Like in the last few years, we've obviously seen like Holby City cancelled, we've seen Doctors cancelled, which both shows are massive training grounds, not only for writing, but for actors. And I mean, one of my first jobs was on Casualty, and I learned a lot about being in the AD department.
Yeah.
How with shows like these going, how difficult do you think it would be, or where can people go to learn their skills, for places for that kind of their knowledge?
I think it's going to be a lot harder. I think Doctors, especially, a lot of my friends, a friend of mine, Doctors was announced, the cancellation was announced the day after his first ever episode of telly.
Wow.
He's literally done his first telly, and he's got one more to come out. And yeah, he doesn't know, what to. I don't know where people will go. I think it's such a shame about Doctors, especially. I was trying to get onto Doctors because I've not done adult TV since that episode of Torchwood. I've been trying to get onto Doctors recently, just to get some adult TV experience. I think all people can do is just keep looking elsewhere, and it's looking for writing opportunities. So, and this way you're always learning. I've just learned there's an email I've signed up to called BBC Jobs, I think it is, because I suddenly realised a load of my friends were writing a spec script for Father Brown, the Father Brown Mysteries, I think it's called. And I didn't know about this opportunity, and there's this opportunity to have a script. Not, I don't think it gets produced, but you go through the process, which is a good experience, and do that. You meet producers and so on and so forth. So I do think it's looking out for opportunities like that. But again, as ever, I do think a lot of it comes down to is making your own opportunities by doing short play nights, trying to get agents to them, trying to get producers to them. Do you know someone who works in telly? Do you have a friend of a friend who works in telly? Like you say, you've worked in the AD department on Casualty. Yeah. Do you have a connection at Casualty that a friend of yours might be able to You know, it's obviously not sharing their details without their permission, but it's saying, would you, you know, do you think there's any way in through that person? But I think it is. You're just gonna people just gonna have to look for the schemes and look for the.
It's just going to be a bit harder, isn't it?
It's going to be a lot harder. I think it's such a shame, and I think all you can do is try and get as much experience elsewhere. So when those TV opportunities do come up, you're not going in with no experience whatsoever. You're going in going, I've had 10 short plays on this year. Here's a short film I made. You know, you've gone through the learning process. So you're used to being script edited. You're used to having a director take on your work and maybe not do what you'd expect with it. You know, it's getting all that experience, which you can get outside of TV. I kind of did it backwards. I got into TV and then discovered fringe theatre and writers groups and things like that. So I did it backwards. But it's getting that experience outside of TV so that when on BBC's Writers' Room it comes up going, we've got a trainee programme on EastEnders coming up, apply now. You can apply with a knowledge and an
understanding of what's needed of you, I suppose.
Yeah.
Talking about the knowledge of writing, what's the process like for writing TV or scripts in general, like from that initial idea that either you or someone may have to actually seeing it on screen? What is that process like?
Laborious.
To me, all I see is I turn the TV on and there's a story there. Like, how does a script come to be? I imagine there's many redrafts.
There's many redrafts. It depends on what the show is, but that's for the average show that I've done, which is say 1 episode or 2 episodes of a half an hour kids TV series. There'll be serial elements, and you'll have your own standalone episode. Tends to be you go to a writer's room for a couple of days. There'll be the producer and the story, sort of the head writer, would have worked out what they want to do. They'll know if an actor's leaving or they want a new character to join or they want some younger characters bringing in. They'll know if there's any big serial changes happening. And they'll have a rough idea and they'll have some story ideas. They'll have things like, now this character's getting older, we want to give them a romance, that kind of thing. So that's there. And then you and the other writers kind of just talk, I like this character, and often it comes down to, I really like this character, or I don't think that actor's very good, so I'd really rather not do anything for them. It can be sort of stuff like that, but also it's just thinking about the stories you want to tell is so important. And then you're usually given the episode, so they'll say, right, you're doing episode 7. It's not necessarily the one you wanted, but it's the one you said you wouldn't mind doing. And you'll be given you'll know who the regulars are. Kids TV, for example, or usually there's a lot of regulars. So you've got one guest character and everybody else. And then you write a episode synopsis usually first. So which I hate. I find those really hard. But that's basically it. It's just, I find it very hard to do. I find it very hard I just did an audio last year from Big Finish for Rani Takes on the World. And my first treatment was 7 pages long or something. And Matt Fitton came back to me and went, it needs to be a page long. And I was like, I don't know how to make it a page. I find it really hard to actually get any kind of creativity across in a 1-page document.
I think I'd be the same. Like, I'm currently in what I'm doing now. There's a lot of development going on, and I learned the other day that there's a difference between a paragraph and a development paragraph. A paragraph to me is just a paragraph. But a development paragraph is a full page. And I'm going through the process of learning how to write one of them now, for one of our ideas. So I kind of get what you're on about.
I mean, it's a good thing. They always are. There is a reason for the process, because after that, once that's signed off by the script editor, the storyline, the producer, everybody else, the children's BBC, head of children's BBC, you then do a scene-by-scene breakdown. And that I enjoy a bit more, because that you can be creative. That's where you're going, actually, I've got a really brilliant opening scene that's going to blow your mind that I couldn't put in the one-page doc. So then you do, the scene-by-scene breakdown, which is what it sounds like. It's saying where the scene will be, what characters will be in it, and a very brief description of what happens in the scene. You don't have to stick to that 100% when you go to script, but it's really useful for the plotting of it. It's really useful for going, actually, does every character go on a journey, is, you know, our wants and needs addressed, and so on, and where do the turning points happen, you know. And I'm now at the stage where that kind of happens organically. I don't really think about, say, the 3-act structure. I do notice when I look at my scene by scene breakdown that I've written, I've gone, oh, there's the 3-act structure. It's there. It's you know, it's not something I think about too much. But that's really useful. Again, that goes off to be signed off by everybody. You might have another go at it. You might have another go at it. Then at some point, somebody will go, actually, we decided we don't want this story. We want to do something else. So you go back to one page and do something completely different. You know, it can happen all the way through it.
Does that happen a lot to you?
It's difficult. Yeah, I think it's definitely happened at least once. But actually, what's often happens is during this process is when you start to go, actually, this doesn't work, and you realize it, and you might be the one to say it, going, I know we wanted Tom to do this, but actually it's not in Tom's character to do this. So there's either Tom is possessed by an alien and does this, or you know, whatever, you know. And that can be, it is a good process for actually sort of getting some of those wrinkles out before you actually go to script. And then when you've eventually got signed scene by scene, you do your first draft. You then immediately, your script editor comes back and goes, you need to lose 2 pages, because you know it's only meant to be 31 pages and you've made it 33, and you've gone, yes, but can I not get away with it for draft 1? And they go, no. That happens every single time. And again, then that just goes off to everybody, and then you usually go to either a 1 week or a 2 week turnaround. So you'll get notes, you've got another week, you get notes, you've got another week, or you'll get notes, you've got 2 weeks. Kind of depends how soon they're filming and how many episodes and writers they're dealing with. And you just keep doing it, and until eventually, it's usually 3, 4, 5 drafts. Never 3, actually. It's usually 4 or 5. And then that's pretty much it signed off. But then what you often have, certainly on a couple of shows I worked on, is you'd have a cast read through, where you'll make notes, and where the script judge will make notes, and you'll go back and go, actually, we want to change this, or, you know, that line didn't work, and you know, let's tweak this. And then often what you might have is a meeting with the director, and the director will have notes as well, so you take on board their notes.
I imagine it's quite like being at school and you hand your homework in and you just have the red notes from your teacher that you're kind of dreading, but it's also really useful.
Yeah, no, and I always like the meeting with the director, because I find that anything that's a one-to-one, or not one-to-one because the script judge isn't out there, but anything that's meeting someone face-to-face or talking on a Zoom or something like that, and not just notes, is, I find, quite useful. And because you get to bounce back and forth, whereas notes, you just go, all right, yeah, and then you just send in the draft and go, I've done 8 of the notes, but these 2 I don't agree with. What can we discuss them? You know, so yeah, then it does that, and then it goes off and gets made. And there might be tweaks while it's being made. Occasionally, you might get a desperate phone call or email saying it's raining, they can't film that scene. Can we move it inside or whatever? But after that, it's kind of taken out of your hands. And you might find your favourite lines are gone, but that's the way it goes.
It's a really interesting process, to be fair. Seeing just how I suppose it feels, the way you described it, it feels more collaborative than what I thought it was in my head. In my head, it was a case of, here's an idea, write the story, maybe a few drafts, a few notes, and then so it's nice to know that I suppose there is a bit more talking to people.
It's very collaborative, and I know really good writers who will never be able to work in television because they don't have that ability to take feedback and notes, and sometimes do notes you don't agree with. You know, there's stuff out there that's got my name on it that I don't agree with everything that's in it, but that's the job, you know. And I think that's the thing with writing for television is, while I'm a passionate writer who wants to tell tales and everything like that, at the same time, it's a job. And you have to, there are technical things you have to put in. You might be only allowed 1 day on location. You might not be allowed an extra set. You might not be able to have as many talking characters as you want. And recently, I mean, I did an episode of The Dumping Ground, and that was made during COVID, and so that was, so many restrictions.
I can imagine there was a lot of challenges with that.
Well, during the lockdown, when filming could take place, it was very much, basically, I think the rule was we could only have 3 people in a room at a time. And so you were literally having to write, and then that person leaves, and then a new person comes in. It was a real challenge, but challenges are fun, and actually, at
It's
the
when you do,
moment,
I suppose, a lot of your best work when you're challenged, because you have to really kind of, I suppose, think about it
yeah,
and not just rely on what you've done before.
yeah. And at the moment, I'm writing a spec script for TV. My agent sort of said, it's time we had a new spec script, and it's actually really hard because there's no limitations. I can just do what I want. Now, obviously, I'm picturing it being filmed, so I'm not having hordes of wildebeest sweeping across panes. But at the same time, there's nobody's coming to me and saying we want this type of character or we want this type of storyline. So it's completely open for what I want to do, and that's actually it's great in some ways, but in other ways, you are just like writing another scene, going, nobody's told me I can't write this scene, so let's just have this now. So it is an interesting thing, but yeah, no, it is very collaborative, and I think you have to bear in mind. I remember getting two bits of advice. I was very lucky to have worked for Russell T Davies. He gave me great advice, and one was if you get conflicting notes, which you can get. So if your script editor and your producer think different things, if one thinks the scene isn't funny enough and one thinks it's too funny or too silly, it's still your problem because it still means the scene isn't working for people. So it's not going, oh God, we can't even agree. It's going, well, actually, what is the scene? It's making you think about the scene. And the other thing to remember is that 99% of people who you work with want the show to be the best thing it can be. So if they're giving you that note and you disagree with it, then you argue it because they might be wrong, but you might be wrong. And it's accepting that you are working with clever, brilliant, talented people most of the time who want the best thing for your show.
It's about opening up that conversation, isn't it? And like we said, just being creative and accepting and just trying different things. You've obviously, like we've already mentioned, you've done a lot of work in both radio drama and in telly as well. When it comes to writing for kids and adults, does that differ at all? Do you approach it differently?
Not massively. There has to be maybe a bit more clarity with kids' TV. You might occasionally write a line that you wouldn't write in adults' TV because in adults' TV it wouldn't need saying. And it's not that kids are stupid, it's that because they're not, you end up writing actually very intelligent plots for
children.
Some
of my favorite scripts some of my favorite TV is from when I was a kid. A lot of the stuff I remember, I mean, the one that comes to my mind is Sarah Jane Adventures. There's so many adult topics covered in that. In a way that children can understand. It doesn't dumb it down, and I really, there's a lot of kids TV out there that I remember more than
you do. And I think you're very aware doing that when you're writing kids TV. We're very aware going, this is going to be really important in someone's life. I still find it odd that the Sarah Jane Adventures, I've adults come to say to me about my stories and they remember it from their childhood. And then you think, well, actually, I remember that from my childhood. If you asked me to name every Netflix show I've watched this year, I wouldn't be able to. I'd have to go and double check and go, oh God, yeah, and that was brilliant, and that was brilliant. But kids TV does stay in your mind. And I think you're very aware of that when you're writing it. Like you say, you can tackle adult subjects and I do wherever I can. What we might do is you might go, well, they might not get the subtext. So sometimes it's slightly spelling out a subtext, just like that, really. And obviously, you don't swear and everything like that. But actually, I think the biggest difference, sadly, is budget limitations. With kids' TV, you're very aware from the outset just how small the budget is, and just the technical limitations of it. So you are aware that there was a show I worked on called Eve, which was great show. You're allowed 1.5 pages of your scripts could be set on location.
Wow.
And you weren't allowed any new standing sets.
How long would a script have been if only
29, 30 pages?
Oh wow, that's barely anything.
And maybe it was 1.5. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a very small thing. And so I had the thing where they were investigating a bad organization, not a cult. We were never allowed to call them a cult. They weren't a cult. They were an organization, and the main boy in the show had to investigate them. Now, I can't remember why, but my location scenes had to be boys playing football. It didn't come naturally to me. I was like, someone kicks a ball and it goes near those white posts. It was to do with reuniting the boy and his best friend or something like that. And also the bad organization were trying to get kids to do more like that. And basically we're trying to destroy technology. They want to destroy all technology. But what I had to have was the main boy had to infiltrate the organization. That was my main story point, was he had to try and find out some in actual fact that we could discover at the end of the episode that'd be important for the next episode. And just went back and forth because we were like, how can he do that? Because there isn't a set for the organization. So where does he meet them? He can't meet them in where his dad works, which is one set. And he can't meet them in his house. He can't meet them in the next door neighbor's house. And in the end, what we had to do was go, we'd meet cocktails with the script editor and head writer, because we're just banging our heads against the wall. And then I suddenly went, have we ever established where this football pitch is? And they went, no. And I went, could just have the line, I live just there. Could you come to my house? You know, which sounds ridiculous. We made it, but it fitted. It works. It's just like, I literally live next door, or I literally live there. Do you want to come in for a cup of tea and tell me more about your organization? So it worked, but it's those kind of limitations that you're often working with. You're often really limited as to that. So it's really using your imagination to go, well, if I've got this location, I'm using every aspect of it. I did a Sarah Jane Adventure, you'll know. I did a Sarah Jane Adventures that's got a fairground in it, which I was given. I think I was given the fairground, you know.
A really, really good story, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But you're using every element of the fairground that you can.
Yeah.
Because you're like, well, if I'm on location at fairground, I want not just that ride, I want the ghost train, I want a janitor's office, I want gates that you have to, you know, it's like, I will use that location. And it forces you, it makes you be even more imaginative than you might have been otherwise. Yeah. Whereas in adult TV, if they go, well, we want a ride set, we want something set on a Ferris wheel, they might just write the scene set on the Ferris wheel and then the pub and then da-da-da. Whereas kids TV, I think you'd go, right, okay, so it's at the fairground, we're using everything. And I do think, but what I love about kids TV is, compared to adults TV, is the pace of it. You've got very limited page count, and you don't waste any second of kids TV. Every second of it matters, because you've already cut half your favorite jokes just to get past draft one, you know, and you're desperately trying to keep the jokes in. That's the big thing, is try and keep the jokes in. But you've got 48 storylines to do, because kids TV is really intelligent, and so they've decided we'll have another serial element featuring this character, and you're like, okay, how do I put that in? Look at the cook's got Alzheimer's. How do I establish that in a scene that's already too full? You know, and I watch some adults TV now, some brilliant adults TV. I love TV. I mean, TV is my favorite medium. You know, there's a lot of really good stuff on Apple and Netflix and so on. But then occasionally you'll see something, and it's usually maybe more from the terrestrial channels, where, you know, somebody will be looking out of a window for a minute, and then they'll go and look in the fridge for a minute, and then they'll go to a shop for a minute. And
it's a lot, it's definitely a lot slower.
Just move. Tell me a story. You know, it's like, that's just an actor looking out of a window.
Yeah.
It's really boring, you know.
It looks really cool, but story-wise, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and you just don't get a chance to do that on kids' TV. So it's really rewarding for that fact that you don't. There is just this pace.
That it is constant. No, I totally get what you mean. I mean, one of my first jobs my first job in telly was on Jamie Johnson, which was a football. As someone that hates football, it was a great first job. But, that was very fast paced, and it was always moving, and they were always doing something. So I totally get what you mean. TV, like you just said, you love TV, it's your favorite medium. What is it about writing TV that excites you, that makes you want to keep doing it?
Is that, I think it's just the fact that everybody sees it. So I love writing theatre because you get to be there and experience the physical reaction. One day I'd love to write a proper film, you know, I think that'd be an amazing experience. But there is something about TV that's so immediate. It's often in some way reflecting the world, or, you know, reflecting a big important aspect of the world. I've noticed, like, say, the last couple of years, we've had a lot of shows that don't really have antagonists. It's just a bunch of people trying to be good, but messing up. Brilliant show with Harrison Fording called Shrinking. There's The Bear and Beef, you know, there's all these amazing shows. And nobody in them is a baddie. It's just people trying to, and that seems to be a current thing at the moment, which I suspect it's because there's a bit of a mindset of, after the world was in lockdown for 2 years, effectively, we kind of, I don't want baddies, I just want everybody trying their hardest. And I think that, you see elements of that in TV that you won't necessarily get in film, and so on. And I think that's something that really is clever and brilliant about television. But also, yeah, it's the fact it's in everybody's homes, and it's the fact that I love stuff you can watch with your family, but also if you can't watch it with your family, I don't live near my family, but we recommend stuff to each other all the time. And so, it'll be like, are you watching that thing? Yeah, in a way that if my sister said, go and watch this film, chances are I wouldn't go and watch the film, because we've got different tastes. But if she recommends a TV show, I'll give it a bash. And 9 times out of 10 really like it, because our tastes might be different, but TV's a bit more of a unifying thing like that. So it's all that kind of stuff. And I just think also it's it's so good for things like representation and so on. The way the world has changed, even just in the time since I've been writing kids TV, where we nearly had a character come out and then we'd realized it'd be a huge deal as they were leaving the series. 2 years later, there was a character come out. There'd been, I think, a couple of gay characters on kids TV before. To now, you can't watch a kids TV show without there being gays and bis and everybody in it, and it's brilliant. But it's just, even in that sort of 15 years, that's how much TV has changed, and that's how much the landscape of the country has changed. It's because that representation matters so much. I'm watching there's a brilliant show called Only Murders in the Building, and it's got a regular, semi-regular.
I've just finished series 1, so please don't spoil it.
I won't spoil it, but there's a deaf character in series 1, isn't there?
Yeah, an amazing bit of telly, and I didn't realize. Didn't realize until the end of the episode that nothing had been said.
Yeah, it's brilliant because you don't notice it. There's an episode of the Bear, the penultimate episode, I think, of series 1, that's all done in one take.
Oh, really? That's so clever. On our list. We need to watch that one.
I really recommend it. It's such a good show. But that deaf character, no spoilers, does come back. And just to have casually a deaf character, it's not important that he's deaf. Yeah. It's like, but other characters have learned sign language, but they don't necessarily know all the sign language. So they'll say, how do you say murder? And things like that. And there's something just so nice about just seeing him regularly involved. And there's not one storyline that's about him being deaf. It's about him just being there. And I think that's where we're heading. And you see that a lot on TV. There's more opportunity for that diversity than maybe in a film.
I totally agree. I mean, some of my favorite, I love film, and I think you can do a lot with film. I find that you can be very experimental and try different things, but with TV, it's definitely the story that I go for, and that's what I love about it. And we just finished Time the other day, the series 2 with Jodie Whittaker, and that was just amazing. It was a really beautiful, powerful story, and it was just about all about motherhood, and it was just really beautiful. I really liked it, and that's something that you couldn't really do with a film. You'd lose a lot of what makes that good.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up under Section 28, so I didn't come out until I was in my early 30s, because I grew up in a small town in the north that just gay didn't exist. I didn't know what was wrong with me. When I eventually did, I moved to London and eventually came out. But when I came out to my family, my sister said to my then 5-year-old niece, 6-year-old niece, Captain Jack in Doctor Who likes kissing boys. Well, so does Uncle Joe. And my niece totally had no issue with it. Yeah. And you sort of go, that's literally in one generation. That town that I grew up in has gone from doesn't exist to kids are fine with it. And not solely because of Captain Jack in Doctor Who, but because of Captain Jack in Doctor Who, my sister had a reference point. And again, that wouldn't have happened if they'd gone to see a film.
Yeah.
It's that reference point of having a regular character.
It's allowing for that conversation to
it's just straight. Yeah. And it allows, it literally gave my sister a reference point to use. I just think it's.
My next question for you would be, if you could give any advice to any budding writers out there, what would it be? And this could be I don't know. I mean, I feel like the thing I really want to get across is you don't have to be young to get into this profession. You can get into it at any age. And can anyone be a writer? What programs do you use? Is it a case of just using Word or stuff like that? What advice can you give?
I think my main advice would be, don't worry too much about final draft, anything like that. Once you get into telly, people make these things clear to you. Actually, that script format isn't good. You should know the basics of how to format a script, but people will come back to you going, no, you can't. We don't want a script on Word. You have to get this thing called final draft. And you go, oh, good. What's that? So I'd say not to worry too much about that. I think the main thing to do is to keep writing. But I do think the biggest thing, and I sort of mentioned this earlier on, is you've got to realize you're not an undiscovered genius who's going to write a script and people are going to make it with no notes. You've got to understand that you take notes. So I produce an audio series for Big Finish based on this old TV series called Dark Shadows. And one year we did a bunch of short story collections, so audio story collections, so 4 stories on a CD. And we said, let's try and give as many new writers a go as possible, because I know a lot of people through my fringe theatre and stuff, and they do one audio, they might get to do another audio, and that happened. I had a couple of mates from that who ended up doing other stuff for Big Finish, which was really rewarding to see. And I said to every one of those writers when they got signed off and they were going to write the script, I said, if I give you 10 notes, you should argue 2 of them and do 8 of them. I've been doing this for, sounds arrogant to say it, but I'm going to say it. I've been doing this for years. I know what I'm talking about, right? It's just that simple. I know what I'm talking about, but I want you to be able to argue back, and the good writers did pretty much exactly that. The 2 writers who I knew will go nowhere are the one who just did all of my notes without any arguing whatsoever, and without then tweaking the other stuff around it. So you go, well, I know you've changed that paragraph, but that next paragraph doesn't make any sense now. Yeah. And it's like, because I said move that outside, well, that means all the remaining scenes should go outside, or somebody has to come back inside. But what you've done there is there's somebody in the kitchen, and it literally makes no sense. And it's because they've gone note number 1, right, that's typed, done. And the other one was, and it's shame, it's a brilliant writer I know. There's a brilliant writer I know who just wouldn't take any notes, argued every note. And it was that thing of going, but some of these are serial elements. Some of these are, stuff that it's out of my hands. It's been established by the TV series that that's what this character will go on to do. And it's about, then you do find the compromise. But I think that's the biggest thing is, the 2 things is look out for those opportunities, because they do exist, and be prepared to collaborate. And if you can't find any opportunities right now, did we start during lockdown, or did we do it since? I think maybe just because of Zoom existing. Me and 3 friends, all at different stages in our careers. I'm probably the most advanced. There's someone who's done nothing professional. There's people who've done plays. There's people who've done nothing. We have a little writers group every month where we all bring a piece of writing and we all critique it for each other. And it's just that thing where you go, yeah, that's brilliant. So I take my spec script. If I'm entering a short story competition, I'll take the short story and read that out and see what people think. There's you always need feedback. It just makes you a better writer. So you can write as much as you want, but you need to get it out there, and you need to be looking for short play nights and things like that. I also do think you need to be prepared to try and socialize a bit. Like, I'm actually I think it surprised people if I said it, but I'm actually slightly introverted, I think. I get very scared about going to a party. Yeah, I go to a party and have the best time ever. It's like I don't have a brilliant time while I'm there, but I'm always a bit nervous about going, because I've got to have to talk to people, and there's 48 people I know there, and I have to talk to that person, but make sure I talk to that person, and what if that person thinks I'm hate. But I do think as a writer, it's important. It makes your writing better because you're experiencing life. Genuinely, I think made me a better writer than the fact that I was a waiter for years.
Because you learn how to talk to people and
and how different people spoke, and how different people behaved, and microaggressions. You see a lot of that as a waiter.
Yes.
And that to me is so important. That's more important than, say, having a knowledge of film history, or knowing which scripting program to use, or knowing what a crash zoom is, or anything like that. It's writing has to be character-led, or you have to be able to write characters to write good, I think. Because not anybody, but a plot can be quite a technical thing. Characterization can't be, and the worst writers are when I think, you go, there's no characterization here. Who is this person? Why do I care? And that's the big thing for me, is just, why do I care? Why should I care? You're writing something about cancer and it's heartbreaking, except I don't like the characters, so I don't care. It's like, it's not a thing. So I do think it's looking out for those opportunities, and those opportunities will include going out. So,
It's the dreaded word networking. It's the thing that on
yeah,
my course and all throughout my career, it's always been that thing of networking. And I like it when I'm doing it, but the thought of having to go somewhere and talk to these
yeah,
people. I mean, for instance, on my course that I'm doing at the minute, we had to talk in front of we had to do a self intro of ourselves, introduce who we were, what we're doing, and what we enjoy doing in our spare time. And I had to do it in front of the CEO of BBC Studios.
yeah.
That absolutely terrified me, but that, as scary as it was, I think it's really helped me understand that when I go to these networking events, I can go and talk to these people,
Yeah,
and they're just like me in a way.
they're just
They're
people,
just
but
getting
also
paid
they
more.
are people looking for people like you.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. It's a bit like a script editor wants your script to be the best thing it can be. Somebody at a networking event wants to find people. That's why they're having a networking event. I mean, I'm terrible at it. I only just got business cards made last year. First time I was 45 years old, and I was like, I'm going to a thing. I should probably get business cards. And he said, "Go. I could have probably done with business cards quite a lot over the last 15 years.
I could have done them 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like, and they're so cheap to get done. But yeah, I do think that's the thing, and just to keep writing. And that's the thing that's hard, is sometimes you just don't want to, but you've got to. But yeah, find every opportunity, because they are out there.
One question that's just come to my mind is, you're a freelancer, right? How do you cope being, because I can imagine writing can be quite an infrequent job in some cases.
Yeah.
I don't know. How would you say to someone starting out, what would be the best advice to someone starting out that is getting into a job that is very infrequent? How can they best cope with the infrequency of I suppose money and work?
Move in with someone who's got a good job. That's what I did. No, I think I mean, yeah, I think you have to choose what you're spending your money on for a start. I don't take many holidays. I don't buy new clothes very often. I do a lot of stuff on eBay. I tend to buy things on eBay rather than Amazon. So it's lots of little money saving tips you can do. But I think the big thing is yeah, obviously don't quit your day job until you're earning enough. It was a long time before I quit my day job.
Yeah.
And someone gave me a good rule of thumb, which is basically save half of what you earn. And that'll see you through the dark times. I went to lockdown was quite hard for me because there was no telly being made, and I got paid for writing a script and then did the dumping ground. But things were tough, and I had to do I had to get onto eBay and become sell some stuff on eBay. It can be like that, and I think it's always going to be like that. And I do think that is the thing that is one of the hardest things about the job, is I think people will think, oh, I do one episode of EastEnders, that means I graduate to Casualty, which means I graduate to this. And it's not like that. It's not like other jobs. It's not like working in an office where you can get a promotion, or a shop where you might get a promotion. Like this year, I said to you earlier, I have done no telly this year. It's first time in, it's 2008 when I did Sarah Jane. I think it's the first time since 2008 I've had no telly job this year. My agent phoned a couple of weeks ago and I was like, oh, hello. Who's this? And she just said kids TV at the moment is really tough.
Yeah.
So I need to be. I'm doing other stuff, and I've now got this paid theatre job, which is a lifesaver and also a dream come true. But yeah, it's not. There's no guaranteed thing. One year you're doing 3 TV shows, and next you're doing none. It's just you can't. I don't think you can fully prepare for that kind of thing. So you just then have to be, okay, I might not be going on holiday this year. I'm looking for ways to save money. I might not be doing that. Things are now better. But certainly, as a rule of thumb, especially with things like tax and that, it's best to save about half of what you do. So the moment any payment goes into my bank account, I move half over to a savings account. And then a week later, I take it back up the savings account.
I'm glad you said that. I do that myself.
My boyfriend sort of goes, you are saving, aren't you? You are saving. I'm like, I don't know how much you think you're earning. I'm earning, but it's half is going to the savings account, and then it's coming out.
The intention's there. As long as the intention's there,
the intention's there. You can't, until you're raking it in. I don't
Yeah.
think you can fully prepare for it. And you might sometimes, and I know writers who've gone back to doing a day job as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's going to be lean times. It's just always, it's just looking out for it. And you just have to accept it.
Yeah.
That's
No.
part of the job. I'm never going to be rich unless I, sell something amazing and become, big writer. I'm never going to be rich. I'm probably never going to have a mortgage, me personally. It's things like that you just have to accept, and that's the job.
No, I mean, I think it's a lot of what people say. Really, is it's about. I suppose we're in an industry where you just have to love what you do, and it's a
Yeah.
shame that that doesn't pay, but you are doing something you love, which is the main
Yes.
thing. Now almost everyone that in telly loves to chat about telly. So I just wanted to know what you're watching right now. What would you recommend?
Only Murders in the Building. I'm
Yeah,
doing that with friends. We've got a little TV club. Again, we watch on Zoom. We're doing, I think, oh, crikey, I think tonight we're doing the last two episodes of Series 3. Very exciting. And then we're going straight into The House of Usher.
nice. Is
Peacock.
that the one that is that like connected to the other Netflix horror film? They're not
Uh,
series.
Midnight Mass, Haunting of Hill
Yes.
House.
Yeah.
So it's Mike Flanagan, who is my new TV god, and I hate him because he's a year younger than me. And I'm like, damn your eyes. He is a genius. His shows are astonishing, Midnight Mass especially. But no, actually, Haunting of Blind Manor is beautiful. His work is astonishing. Cannot wait to get on to House of Usher. There's a lot of really good stuff. There's stuff that's just finished. That Succession was amazing.
Yeah.
But actually, at the moment, I might love all those shows, but at the moment, I'm getting up a little bit earlier every morning, so I get my daily fix of Neighbours and EastEnders. Neighbours
Man,
has come back and is really good, and EastEnders is on an absolute high at the
I am
moment.
with you on that. EastEnders it's my staple before work, and my boyfriend's off for the week, so luckily we can watch it before work. Otherwise, I have to wait
Yeah,
till 7:30, and I hate waiting because
no, I
I
won't be
just need to
waiting.
know. And it generally feels like the glory days, and I love that I'm
Oh,
out of soap because
it's so good. It's doing such brilliant stuff at the moment. Um, not just the storylines, but the way they're being told. And really, it's being made by a man who really cares about soap and really cares about EastEnders. It's not just a job. It's not something like that. He absolutely passionately cares about what soap opera is.
yeah,
And the other thing I'm loving this year is Big Brother, which
yeah.
I gave up on years ago. I gave up on Big Brother around series 5 or 6 back
This
in
is
the
my
old
first ever
days.
series. I've never seen it before,
It's
and
been not great for the last
I
few
mean,
years. But
I've been from
this
what
year,
I've seen, I've enjoyed it. Apart
yeah,
from yesterday, I just thought they completely. I thought personally, it fell completely flat. The whole backdoor exit and everything. It
yeah,
didn't work. I thought
yeah.
it just could have been so much better. But no, as someone that's never seen Big Brother before, absolutely love it. My only intro to Big Brother before this was Doctor Who series 1 finale.
Yes.
So
No, Big Brother when it started was astonishing television
yeah,
and really good for writers because you can watch how
really,
people interact. There was a brilliant, it was awful to call the police, but there was a thing called Fight Night in one of the first 3 or 4, maybe, series
mm,
3 or 4. They put in a bunch of people and there were basically a divide. There were these people and these people. Did not get on particularly, but they weren't close. There was a couple of very alpha straight men, and then there was a transsexual, and there was a bit of a divide.
yeah,
But also there were people who were there just having fun and all that stuff. Well, there was this night where they did a really clever thing of they sent two of the um, contestants, housemates, thought they'd been evicted and they weren't. They were moved into a secret house to watch Big Brother, which meant you just had the joyous thing for a start of you're watching people watching Big Brother,
like
which was
early
great.
days of Gogglebox.
And yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, pre-Gogglebox. And it meant they were watching it and then they went back in during a party. They suddenly revealed they were there
Oh,
because they knew what people had been saying about them. They knew what people were saying about each other. One started going up to somebody and telling them, so they tell somebody else. Ended up with a woman crying along the stairs, but it ended up with a physical fight. There was a physical fight. I think the police were called, but I remember watching it on the live feed And where I lived at the time, we didn't even have good internet. So I was sat at the bottom of the stairs,
Oh,
which is the
wow.
only place where you could plug in your internet. And I remember sitting at the bottom of the stairs at 4 a.m, just watching this, because as a writer, it was fascinating to see how different people gossiped and how they related to gossip and how
Yeah.
people aggressively shared things, And I think a lot of your writing is getting information across without it seeming like you're getting information across. So it's how do I tell the most heartbreaking thing ever, but tell it as a joke?
That's absolutely
how,
fascinating to think that Big Brother has helped you write your scripts over the years. I've never really thought
oh,
about it.
totally.
But thinking to some of the conversations that they've had this series, you can really see how people make connections. And I suppose that really does help what you do. That's generally really fascinating. That's everything that I wanted to ask you. Is there anything else you wanted to add at all?
Just no, not really. I think just that it is the dream job, but it is hard work, and I think it's knowing before you go in that it is going to be hard work. There is a big difference between writing as a hobby and writing as your job, and you've got to be prepared for it not always going well. You've got to be prepared for arguments. There are going to be times you fall out with people. It can be hard work, but it's so rewarding, and there is, for me, nothing rewarding than sitting in an audience and hearing them react to something that I've written, or having someone come up to me as a writers group that I'm at, that I used to go to, and this gorgeous actor joined one week, and absolutely fit, 6'2", beautiful man. And we both clocked that we were going for extra pints. We'd rush out our feedback, so we weren't waiting for the official break to go for official, it's a writers group. We'd go out for extra pints. They were chatting away at the bar, and he said to me, listen, I must say, I know who you are. You scared me as a child because you wrote this thing called The Nightmare Man. And I'm like, the hell? It's cool. We're really good mates now, but it's that thing. I'm just going, oh my God. And it's that, while that was, absolutely so weird, there is something where you go, there is going to be, after I die, a generation of people who will remember stuff I've written. That never goes away. Especially if you do Doctor Who related stuff.
That's
going to
true.
be about stuff I've written in 100 years' time. Long after everybody involved is dead, there's going to be clips appearing on shows and stuff. And that's just weird to think about. But there is something about writing that is so special for that. When you make your mum cry with something that you've written, and and you're like, wow,
One of my favorite things to do is cry at TV. Like when something's made me cry and have like that kind of emotion, I know that what I'm watching is really good usually. I love that. And just on the Nightmare Man topic, I've told you before, I absolutely that script, it still terrifies me.
Oh, thank you.
Genuinely a really good script. But no, thank you so much for chatting to me about writing, and hopefully people out there, budding writers, listen to this, might be writing something that you're watching one day.
Yeah, no, I think. Sorry, the last thing I'll say is it is out there. I did not grow up. I grew up in a small town in Yorkshire in the 80s and 90s. We had no connections to TV. People on TV were another world. I have not come from a world of connect. You can get into it without knowing people. It's a difficult route, but it's not an unimaginable dream to get into being a writer.
No, it is possible. No, thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the episode this week. I thought it was really interesting hearing Joe talk about the process of writing and also sharing his honest thoughts on the challenges of breaking into the industry, because it is tough, and especially for something like writing. I just thought what he was saying, it was just really honest, and you really knew that he meant it. But it's definitely an industry, and it's a job where you can make it work if you put the work in yourself. But please let me know what you thought, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Also, if you work in TV yourself and you fancy being on the podcast talking about what you do, please definitely get in touch via Instagram or Twitter, and I will definitely be setting up an episode with you, because I just want to make this series as versatile as possible in regards to the the jobs that we're talking about. I want to cover as many jobs as I can and make the industry as accessible as I possibly can make it. If you want to keep up to date with any of Getting Into TV, just search it over on Twitter and Instagram and you'll never miss an episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye.